What is up, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. I'm Jacob Turner. He's Andrew Jones. We're back here for another quick daily drop at TarHeelIllustrated.com. Before we dive into it, though, got to do a couple of housekeeping items. For those who watch us, subscribers, go ahead and subscribe below. If you're not, you know what we're going to say here, but we are on the race to hit a few milestones. Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube are on the race for 20,000 subscribers on YouTube. 12,000 followers on Facebook. That one's ramping up quickly. I think we're getting close to 10,000 over there. And then Twitter, we're on the race for 40,000 followers. And AJ, tell the people that don't know what you're going to do if we can hit those milestones.
Our website, TarHeelIllustrated.com. We're in the Rivals.com Yahoo Sports Network. It's $100 for a one-year subscription, which works out to $8.33 a month. We're going to give away a bunch of those for free to new people who either subscribe on the YouTube side, which doesn't cost anything, or just follow us on Twitter/X and also on Facebook. So we're going to randomly choose some people, a couple of people on the YouTube front. We're going to give away a couple of 2-year subscriptions, back-to-back subscriptions. We're going to give that away. So that's a great value. We have an amazing community. Our message boards are absolutely fantastic. Very thoughtful, passionate Carolina fans. There's a ton of stuff that we have that we don't put on these free boards. We are a business. We are a media outlet, and this is what we do. This is what I do for a living. In order to pay staff and everything else, we got to charge. And nothing is really free out there right now. People say, well, I can get it for free. You can't. There's a couple of outlets that cover North Carolina, and the UNC fans should be very fortunate they have that, and we're one of them. And we got a ton of great stuff that you're never going to get on these videos, and you're never going to get with free content on the front page. You got to be premium member. And guess what? We're going to give away a bunch of those. So go to Facebook, go to Twitter/X, and right here, YouTube. Make sure you check all 3 boxes, follow and sign up, and maybe you'll win that. Maybe, who knows? You may win a couple. You never know. You might get real lucky and hit the jackpot and get like 4 free years of THI.
Yeah, can you imagine that? That would be fantastic. If you do that, you need to go buy a lottery ticket right after, too, because you're a lucky guy. But yeah, again, giving free ones away. Links in the description. You can obviously hit this subscribe button below, too. So go ahead and do that while you're listening to this one. And yeah, we appreciate it. But one thing you can do for free, watch this video, like this video, and subscribe. So again, all that is much appreciated.
We have a lot of free content. We put a lot of free content out.
Yeah, man, especially just on the YouTube channel alone.
If you think our free content's good, just imagine how good the premium content is.
Exactly. Head on over, guys, and we'd love for you guys to join our awesome community. But AJ, in this drop, we're gonna just have a quick conversation and looking back to that Clemson game about 13 days ago, February 10th, by the time this video comes out, because we're gonna put this out on Sunday evening. But I think it's an interesting conversation to have, and it's something we've talked about a little bit on podcasts and in 3 Things a little bit. I know it's something you've written about too, about that Clemson game kind of being this bottoming out moment for the Tar Heels. And we were joking off camera about it being kind of a come to Jesus moment, a moment of truth for the Tar Heels. And again, this is something that RJ Davis talked about. I believe it was after the Syracuse game you asked him, and he said that it felt like people after that Clemson loss kind of understood what was at stake. That was kind of the words that he used to describe it, and they fully grasped that. And I always thought that was an interesting quote, because you can kind of look at that in different ways of, okay, understanding what's at stake. Well, what does that mean? Is it guys understanding that, okay, this season can really go off the rails if we don't fix up? I think it was a very interesting quote for RJ, but it really illustrates that the moment that Carolina found itself in after getting blown out at Clemson. You fast forward to where we are 13 days later, Carolina having won 3 in a row, coming off 2 very comfortable and controlled wins over State and UVA. And again, I'll preface it by saying, because people are going to get on us in the comments, I know that Syracuse and State and UVA all stink, to use the word I like to describe them as. But again, AJ, you only beat the competition that's in front of you, so you have to give credit to Carolina for that. And I think it's funny, because I think if I would have asked you after the Clemson game, if I would have got on the 3 Things with you and said, all right, AJ, predict the next 3 games for Carolina, I think you would have looked at the schedule and say, yeah, they could probably win all 3, but based on what we saw after Clemson, I'm not going to, if I'm a betting man, I'm not going to bet on it. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. And that's just the place that Carolina found itself. So you have to give a lot of credit to this team for kind of, again, albeit against weaker opponents, kind of feeling like they're headed in the right direction, at least. Because, again, there's been a lot of moments this year where we just haven't been able to say that. So you were in the Clemson locker room, AJ. I'll take you back to that moment. But what have you seen, and what do you think has changed with this team since that kind of bottoming out moment that they found themselves having at Clemson a few weeks ago?
I'm going to lend value to player interviews again. which sometimes people, I don't want to hear what the players say. They say, no, it's a smart group of kids. They say things that carry a tremendous amount of value, in my opinion. That's one reason why we talk to them. I'm going to roll with RJ. I wrote a piece from Syracuse that we ran last Sunday, and the headline, if you can Google it, just TarIllustrated.com, all together now, then it'll come up. And it was RJ talking about how maybe, because he said, we all understand what's at stake. And I jumped in and I said, RJ, I hear you say that a lot. I don't always hear the others say that, because what he's talking about is they need wins, NCAA resume. There's something bigger down the road for them to play for. And they hadn't really kind of galvanized and done that yet. They were scattered parts. And he said that week in practice, they were the best 3 days they'd had. And he felt like everybody had come together and was in the same wavelength. And that was the first time all year they'd been that way. So I wrote the piece. It's a fair piece to write at that time. That's what he's saying. That's part of reporting from how the team views things. Well, lo and behold, they've had 2 phenomenal performances since then. And they've had phenomenal performances, not just playing better, but they're different. We've already talked so many about the different boxes that they're checking, also the different approaches. And I think that's part of what's happening here, because I think that there was recognition at the top, but what they were doing wasn't working. And I don't know what those conversations were. We asked them about conversations. There's some things they're going to keep in-house, and that's awesome. They should do that, and they have that right. But I'm wondering how much, Hubert said he poked and prodded, but I'm wondering how much recognition that, okay, we need to change. It's across the board. I got to be better. Staff has to be better. Trainers have to be better. Student managers have to be better. You guys have to be better. And here's how we're going to look moving forward. All those different things that must have occurred in some form that week have brought us to where we are now. So when the guys are asked, I asked Ian, give me the first thing that comes to your mind when I ask you what's been different the last 3 games. He said together. When I asked her, and these are freshmen who are now far more thoughtful about things than they were earlier because they're more experienced and they've been through some stuff. I asked Drake, and he said one. And he then had an addendum that it's defense. You can't play defense if you don't play with one, period. We've seen that from this team a lot this year, and we sure as hell saw it at Little John Coliseum. There wasn't any one out there, but we've seen one since then. And I think that's a trigger point. That to me is sort of the birthplace of perhaps what this team could be moving forward. They still have a long way to go because, as you noted, Syracuse is bad. NC State's worse. Virginia is rudderless. They don't have a coach. A legend left them hanging right before the start of the season. I can only imagine what that was like for those kids, and they're trying to get through the year. So these haven't been great tests. But we've seen this team play teams like this and stink. I don't think Virginia's any worse than Stanford. Stanford won in here.
I know.
So yeah. BC's terrible. They almost won in here. Pitt has not been that good the last 2 months. They almost won in here and did win up in Pittsburgh. So I think that's an interesting 3 days after the Clemson game, excuse me. And I'm going to explore that more, because if this continues, those 3 days become more important, because they gave us Jay Witt, right? I say us Jay Witt to suddenly focus on. I didn't write about him at all for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Didn't even write his name, except when I'm taking notes during games. And it was always Jay Witt. I didn't even write his full. I hadn't written JAE''LYN in like 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I didn't need to, but now I'm writing it many times every day. They've changed. So I think that's a very interesting period to look back on, and they're very comfortable talking about it. And the reason that we know these things is because they're talking about it and they're telling us. So I suggest to any passionate Carolina fan, go watch the player interviews after the last few games. Watch them after this game here today that we're recording this Saturday at Smith Center. Hear what they're saying. If you want to know what's up, listen to them, because they're articulating it pretty well right now.
Yeah, they are. And it's such an interesting thing to explore, which is why we want to do a drop on it, because you talk about this kind of bottoming out moment, moment of realization for North Carolina after the Clemson game. And for me, you've been doing this for a long time, AJ, so you'll know better than I do. But those things usually go one of two ways when you kind of hit rock bottom a little bit. It either, okay, we've hit rock bottom and this train's going to continue to go off the tracks. This thing's over. We're not turning this thing around. We're done. or it goes the other way where it kind of galvanizes a team and brings a team together a little bit more. But I feel like in order to do that, there has to be a little bit of a leadership component in there that goes the right way too, whether it's from a player perspective, like you said, whether it's from a staff perspective, whether it's a collective thing where guys just kind of say, okay, we're not accepting this anymore. And sometimes it's just, hey, we're tired of losing. We got to start winning games and we want to get back to that winning feeling. And that kind of pushes you to get, move forward. And again, in sports, start winning games, which is what Carolina's done, again, albeit against weaker competition. But again, you can only beat the teams that are in front of you. So that moment at Clemson is just so fascinating because it could have gone one or two ways. And I think we were talking after that game being like, I don't know, man. I think this team might be done. That hasn't been the case with this team. We've seen guys like Jay Witt step up. We've seen guys like Vidal and Lubin play better. We've seen Carolina go to that taller lineup, which has helped those guys shine a little bit more. So it seems like you can't just point it at one thing. To me, it seems like a collective coming together from a staff perspective, doing some things differently that people have kind of called for all season. And also, AJ, guys stepping up. Sometimes we talked about it in three things, but sometimes just one player like a Jay Witt can kind of galvanize your team a little bit, especially individuals who may not be performing like they want to be. Seeing somebody who struggled all season in his final year of college basketball starting to pick it up, that can increase belief throughout the roster. And I think we've seen that a little bit. So now it can end very quickly. You go down to Florida State, you lay an egg and you perform badly and you lose. Then this conversation, you're kind of like, okay, maybe it was just they beat, three pretty bad teams, two of which at home. And you kind of look back and say, maybe it wasn't as big of a turning point as we thought. But again, it's something I think we need to continue to explore as the weeks go by. Because if we're talking next week after, potentially an FSU win, then I think that Clemson game, again, becomes even more interesting to explore. But I find it fascinating, man, because I didn't see it coming, and I don't think you necessarily did either.
Yeah, considering how this team played up through the Clemson game, I don't think there's a turning point. I think it's a long turning curve. So it takes a while to get around and fully change direction. And that's what we're going to witness here the next couple of weeks if they continue to win. A big part of it, and what gives us license to discuss the possibility of a turning point, is because they've changed. If you listen to our three things after the game Saturday and read our stuff, it's a different approach. So lots of different stuff's going on, and it's one of the reasons they feel different about themselves. I thought it was interesting. If you go back to Clemson, the great Adam Smith over at Inside Carolina, I know he's competition, but I have no problem talking. Like I said, Carolina fans are so fortunate they have sites that are very good covering them. Adam's a phenomenal journalist, and he asks great questions. And he asked Hubert after the Clemson game down at Little John, has the team lost its fight? I asked a follow-up question to Hubert, is the team broken? So he and I had the back-to-back questions there at that. And I think it was very fair to ask those things at that time because it looked like the fight was gone and they looked broken. So when you hit rock bottom, one of two things happens. Go to your roof or stand on a third floor balcony somewhere, wherever, over a bridge and there's no traffic coming. Drop something. It's going to do one of two things when it hits. It's either going to splat, like break and splatter everywhere, or it's going to bounce up some. Only one of two things are going to happen. Carolina bounced up some. Now, they haven't caromed. They're not peak level at all, but they came up. So they didn't die that night. Maybe it was a rebirth. And what happens when you rebirth? It takes time. You don't come out of the womb dunking the basketball. As good as MJ was, it took a while. It took about 16 years for him to do it. So we might be watching what originated with a rebirth after Clemson. Or we might not be. I think through three games, yes, it's been a nice spark to the season. For fans, it's something different because they are seeing different things happen. They're seeing this team win, playing a different style. For us, it gives us something different to talk about and write about. I can't tell you how many times I was copying and pasting about giant runs allowed to opponents. And I just say, well, let me add this one here in the post-game reports. It was getting tiresome doing that. It was getting boring. From that perspective. So we'll see. Monday night's going to be huge. At Tallahassee is going to be big. Yeah. It's a very, very losable game. And it's a much better team they play the following two, and they're better than who they played the last three. So, and if they take care of business, then you got to take care of business two more times to make that last regular season game actually carry a tremendous amount of meaning. But the only way it will is to, if this is a rebirth, is to continue to grow. into who they are becoming. And we'll see if they are doing that.
Yeah, one game at a time, man. I mean, we've said that a few times, but I think that's kind of the mode this team needs to be in right now and has to be in because of the situation it finds itself in. But winnable games coming up before that Duke game. It is tricky on Monday night. We talked about that in 3 Things a little bit, so go check that out if you haven't already. But again, I think it was worth doing a quick drop just to explore it a little bit because you can't hide the fact that Carolina's won 3 in a row, albeit against weaker competition, but you can only beat the teams that are in front of you. And if you can carry that momentum into the rest of the season, like you just said, again, there's opportunities, man, and you never know what can happen in that Duke game. I've said it about 1,000,000 times, but that rivalry, man, you just never know. And I don't know. If Carolina can get to that point having won these games, that game becomes a lot more interesting for potentially some postseason basketball that Carolina wants to have.
Jacob, I'm going to hammer it. It's not just that they've won 3 in a row. It's not even the margins of the last 2. It's how they've gone about it. To me, that's the key. When I wrote the column the other night, are the Tar Heels changing? It's because they're doing things differently. If this is who they are the rest of the way, to me, it's the best approach for this team. Should have been the approach a long time ago. They're giving themselves more of a fighting chance. So we'll see. We'll see Monday night. I can't wait to get down there. I love going down there to cover games. Get to see the great Chuck Walsh, the SID at Florida State. I've known Chuck since he was at Maryland. Known Chuck for 29 years.
Wow, it's about as long as you've been doing it, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, Chuck used to transfer me up there, and I covered a lot of Maryland games. So I've known Chuck for 29 years, and he's phenomenal at what he does. And Leonard Hamilton's got 2 home games left, I think it is, and they're going to be ready to go with the Tar Heels in town. So it's going to be a very, very difficult assignment for Carolina, but I cannot wait to see if what we're talking about now continues or if it dies on the vine.
Yeah, can't guarantee a win down there, but AJ, one thing I can guarantee you is it will be a lot warmer down there than it was in Syracuse about a week ago. So I'm sure you're looking forward to that Florida weather.
Well, the snow came with me. I told my wife the other night, I've been in 9 snowfalls this winter now. We're going to Madison Square Garden in December. It's snowing. Go up to Boston for football. It snowed the day before. Snows everywhere. We go to Notre Dame for basketball. It's snowing. Louisville, I'm taking off. We're de-icing for an hour because it's snowing.
Oh, that's sketchy.
Syracuse, it's snowing. Pittsburgh, it had just snowed. It's unbelievable. So the weather.
Yeah, what are we looking like on Monday night? Yeah, what are we looking like?
Hang with me here. Well, it's 53 right now, so it's it's not that different than Raleigh a lot of the time in the wintertime.
Yeah, that's probably a good point. Yeah, because that's a little more north too in Florida.
Okay, so Monday high is 64, low 49. So it's almost like it's going to be here.
That's like summertime, but it's what we've had.
But given what we've had, I mean, I was getting my steps the other night, and it's 28. Felt like 20, and I don't know how I did it, but I did it. And by the way, today will be, what's today, the 22nd? Yeah. Today will be 1,382 consecutive days with at least 10,000 steps.
That's good stuff, man. I don't think people understand. That's impressive. Surely that is very impressive to do it that consistently.
And right now, my knee hurts like hell, too. I think I may have an ACL injury.
That's what happens when you get 10,000.
I'm not getting surgery, baby. I'm not in the street for that.
That's what happens.
I'm only half playing. My knee does hurt, but it's all part of it. It hurt because the flight coming back from Syracuse, it's brutal. And I'm in the window seat, and I got someone next to me that makes me look small, and it is pounding me against the side, and the plane's going like that, and my knee's just taking a beating.
Oh God, man. Yeah, man, that's tough right there. Well, I know you're not going to stay off your knee because you can't and you won't. So hopefully that'll stop hurting in a few days. But hopefully you have a better flight down to Tallahassee. But at least the weather will be a little bit better. I know the weather can affect some of that stuff too, man. You get a little cold, the joints start aching a little bit. That's a real thing too, man. So we'll see what happens. Check back in a couple of weeks. We'll ask you about your knee again, see if it's feeling better. You got a little mid-season injury right now, but I know that's not going to stop you. You got to keep playing through the pain, right?
I'll play through it. Hey, if Jaywick can play through the scratched eye, looking like Tales from the Crypt, then I can play through a little banged up knee.
Yeah, that's for damn sure, man. That is for sure. But all right, man, let's go ahead and get the heck out of here. Again, links in the description below for Twitter and Facebook. Go on over there and follow us on both of those. Much appreciated. Subscribe below. Like the video, too, if you like what you've seen recently for Carolina. Like the video below, too, if you think Carolina's going to go down to Florida State on Monday night and get that W. I want to see how many people are believing. I think some Carolina fans might be believing a little bit again. Be a little more confident in this team based on what they've seen recently. And again, I think that's rightly so. So we'll see what happens on Monday night. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Another edition of our Daily Drop. Appreciate you guys watching as always. We'll see y'all next time. Thanks.